the game because he honors the game in a great way as a baseball player. So this particular PCA model is all about creating culture. So we as coaches have a great opportunity to create the culture of our teams through this PCA model, honoring the game. Now, this model has actually been adopted by a number of governing sports organizations across the country, youth sports organizations. So you'll find it on, hey, Ruben, how are you?
I think he's there. There he is.
Yeah, we just started. Hey, Ruben.
Hi, John.
So we're just starting on honoring the game right at the beginning. So a lot of youth sports organizations use this particular model. It's actually on their websites. They espouse it. That includes USA Youth Soccer, US Football, the Junior NBA, Little League Baseball, Little League Softball, US Lacrosse, and the AAU. So it is really popular, and we're going to get into it right now. So at PCA, we like acronyms. This particular one for honoring the game is ROOTS. And it's also, if you remember the R, the first letter, it's also about respect. So it's respecting all these particular areas. And again, I'll say this many times, we have the opportunity as coaches to create our culture rather than having our culture created for us. Meaning the way kids may react or parents are, or administrators, we have a great opportunity to set the culture. So again, this is also about respect, and it starts with rules. So rules is pretty simple, right? Basically, rules are in place to kind of level the playing field, to make competition even. So this is the easy one, right? We want to respect the rules of the game. We want to play fair and square. When we win, it's a good win. It's satisfying to our kids. It's all about integrity. If we have teams that may be breaking the rules or changing or not really going with the spirit of the rule, we don't agree with that as coaches. So that's kind of what we espouse to our kids: respect the rules of the game. The second one is opponents. So we at the PCA believe that opponents, we have to be fierce but friendly with our opponents. So we look at opponents basically as a gift. And the reason I say that is primarily because it gives us an opportunity to get better as players and as teams in total. We have measuring sticks with opponents. We can work on things. So we look at it as a positive. I'm always happy to see in my local newspaper, there's a sports section that has a high school, part of it is the high school section. They have box scores and different things. But they also do particular feature articles on particular games. And I see a lot of times now, more than ever, I see players who are interviewed for the games talking about the opposition, but they're talking about it in a very positive way. So they're saying, yeah, that team was really good. We were really prepared. They had a great offense. We had to really hunker down on defense. We were down at the half. You know, they go through this whole thing, but they're really honoring their opponents. In those same articles, we're also seeing that the coaches are having the same type of concept, comments. So we can see basically that that's filtering down from the coaches to the players, and they're creating their culture of honoring their opponent, and that's good to see, and that's what we want from our players. Officials. This is a tough one. The numbers of officials are actually declining across youth sports and also high school. You know, we include high school sports as well. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's harder and harder to get officials today?
Thankless job.
Because no sane adult will do it. For real.
It's just a thankless job.
Yeah.
Yeah. But why? More specifically, what's going on that they're a thankless job? Maybe they're not looking for thanks. Maybe they're just looking to get through a game.
You're expected to be great, and you're abused when you make mistakes or when you don't make the calls that people want you to make, even when they're the right call. Right.
And sometimes that goes even a little bit further. So the National Association of Sports Officials did a survey of 17,000 amateur officials. And what they found, and almost half the officials actually said that they had fear at some point during some of their games. They actually feared their parents, they feared the coaches, they feared the players. Also, the Federation of High School Associations, which is the governing body for rules with high school sports, they're finding that out of every 10 officials, by the third year, only 2 will still be officiating. So 8 out of 10 officials by the third year drop out of being an official. And you think about it, they love the sport. They actually, you know, they get trained. They spend a lot of time and effort. They're getting money. Maybe they're helping their family out or helping themselves out. They're just people, right? They just want to do a good job. But we're finding that, you know, the culture seems to be professional sports is filtering down to our youth. And so we want to really, as teaching life lessons with our kids and working on their personal development and how they relate to adults, is to really talk about respecting officials. And that's really important. So we're going to hone in on that a lot. Teammates. So teammates, again, this is about respecting your teammates on the field and off the field. This is the culture that you want to establish with your team. You want to build chemistry. Who here does something with their teams to build chemistry? Maybe off the field, some things that you guys do. Anybody?
We do a party the first day of practice every year. The first day of lacrosse practice in the spring, we don't even pick up a stick. We just have like a fun, like a field day almost. We do a lot of relay races and games and just goofy stuff that has nothing to do with lacrosse. A lot of icebreakers and getting to know you things and team bonding. And that's the whole first practice.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Yeah, I usually like to give my players a lot of space and ownership during post games and locker room, and really, you know, have them make each other better more than I do. And I tell them right off the bat, you know, at the beginning of the season, my job is to become not as necessary. You know, you guys should be working for yourselves, and that gives them a certain perspective with each other. Yeah,
that's great. All about chemistry building. So my son's his high school baseball team, what they basically did were pasta parties, and every parent had to host a pasta party. So it was pretty funny, actually. We did like 20, 25 of them during the season, and the kids would file into your house. They'd sit at the table, you'd serve them, they'd talk a lot. It was good. They really bonded that way, and then they would just leave. But we found out through a survey that actually for the Italian families that hosted, the kids stayed longer. We couldn't figure that out. We just didn't know. But that's maybe Joe can appreciate that. I'm part Italian, so I can say that. That's
where I decided, John, after hosting many pasta parties, that meatballs should be square, because there have been more meatballs rolled onto my floor after they go through the line, and then they all go sit in the family room, living room outside, that there's always a meatball on the floor. So I'm trying to invent square meatballs.
Okay.
For pasta parties.
We need a device to do that.
Heretic.
Yes, we do.
Cool.
I'm going to market it.
Okay.
Heretic.
Meatball patties.
And then self. So basically, you know, if players are actually respecting these particular other areas, then they will feel more self-respect. They'll feel more integrity. So we want to actually, again, reinforce that with our kids and our players. So talking about the officials and the point that was made before about, you know, being a thankless job, here's an example. So the opposing coach has been riding the refs the entire game, and it seems to be working. Now in the final moments of the game, of a close game, the official makes a horrible call against your team. What can you do? So what I'd like you to do is to get together in groups of 4. So I'm going to get a little bit of a larger group together, and we're going to discuss basically what you would do in this particular situation, how you would handle it. If you got upset, what did you do when you got upset? If you remain calm, what did you do? And then when we break on that, you know, we'll share some ideas on that. Okay, so like with the other toolkits that we have for the other PCA coaching models, the Honoring the Game toolkit you'll find in your book. It's chapter 8. It's page 46 in your Double Goal Coach book. Just to dovetail off that last example, we do something with at the PCA called narrated modeling, and that means that basically, you know, you actually explain what you're thinking and what you're doing in terms of getting a bad call like that. So what may happen if you don't say anything at the particular time that call is made? What's the impression of you as a coach? Remember, it's a heated game. It's the end of the game. It's it's a call that goes against your team. The other team was riding the umpire, and he kind of, maybe he broke, and he gave a good call for the other team.
That you don't know what's going on, or that you don't care. Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is an important point about modeling and teach honor the game. We'll get to that basically in a second. But if you establish the guidelines that this is how we act as a team, we respect the officials, then you can basically talk to your team and explain exactly what has transpired. So what we typically say is we wait for a timeout, we wait for a break between innings, and then we speak to the official. So when we approach the official, what's the best way physically to do that? Is it to go nose to nose with them, basically turn your cap around, or is there a better way?
I would say to try to use a non-aggressive, non-confrontational body language.
Right.
Yeah, there's a
so nose to nose would be an example of confrontational, I think.
Exactly.
There's a youth football program near us that demands, and as a matter of fact, the coach could be suspended for not doing this, that they speak only side to side, shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, perfect point. So we espouse that at the PCA. Walk up, talk side to side, have that conversation. When you go back to the bench, then you explain to your team, we respect the official, we honor the game. That was a very questionable call. You want your team to realize that, yes, you do realize that was a bad call. It was a bad call, but we respect the officials, and then we go from there. And so as long as that's established and parents understand that too, no one's going to question you as a coach, because you've created a positive culture that way. Model and teach honor the game. So this is a very important one. It starts at the very beginning. So the roots that we showed before, rules, opponents, officials, teammates, and self, why not put that on a poster, put it in your gym? Definitely put it on a piece of paper, put your team logo on top, hand that out to your team, hand that out to the parents, so that's understood that this is basically what our culture is. You have the opportunity to create life lessons, a really positive culture for your team, and you're reinforcing that in writing. And so you can always go back to that, and people understand, what the team is all about, how you operate. Self-control routine is another one. So when you do get upset in that heat of battle, what are some of the things that you do to kind of maybe calm yourself down? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're not calm. But for those that are, what do you do? Any ideas? Let's throw that out there.
I drink a lot of water. I always have a water bottle with me, and I just take a long drink of water, and keeps my mouth shut, cools me down.
Yeah, so that's interesting you say that, because the self-control routine of the PCA, there are different water companies that are trying to become the sponsor for the self-control routine. I don't know about that.
A good idea.
No, but that's one of them for sure. That's a great one. I'm going to take some other ideas too. I think one of the things you could do too is do your own mistake ritual. If you're really upset about a call, just kind of brush it off yourself. Just kind of brush it off and say, okay, let's move on to the next play. Because what happens if you're really upset? What happens to your players at that very moment? If you're upset at that call and you start going out halfway to the official and you're saying something, how do the players react?
They get distracted by you, and they might follow your lead.
Right. Yeah. So we go back to this idea of the mind in the moment, right? The next play, what's important. We want our kids to focus on what's happening on the field, and not for us as coaches to be a distraction. So the parenting tools are in here too. You'll find that too, as a double goal coach, and when you're really creating a positive culture, you're going to have less problems with parents on the sidelines, because it's understood basically how you're operating as a team. I think that's really important. We also have the second goal parent workshop. So for all you coaches, if you're parents, recommend that you come back for that, but also to talk to the parents in your in your organizations that are not coaching kids. Tell them about our workshop. It's really designed to help parents work with kids through their life lessons, and also to understand coaches better too, in terms of what we do for our teams. So the importance of culture creation. Culture is the way we do things here. So that's how the PCA defines it, the way we do things here. I would say, I mentioned this earlier before, and we said in the Elm Tree of Mastery model, be a noticer of effort. I would say be a noticer of culture. Start to notice the culture and how your team is reacting in certain situations, and then bring that out in team meetings. So for example, if there's a game and a player goes up to official at the end of the game and shakes their hand, or if there was something in the moment where a player got knocked down on the other team and your player helped that player up, or you basically adhere to a rule when you could have broken it in a certain situation, in your team meetings, you want to bring that out. So you want to be a noticer of culture, because again, what gets rewarded gets repeated that way too. And you solidify the culture of your team when you do that. So Julie Foudy, two-time world soccer champion. She's very visible in the PCA. She's a part of our national advisory board, and she's a very positive person, but she's a very strong person in her opinions, but they're all positive and they're all good. And so she's going to talk about here creating that positive team culture. And it's based on that word again that we talked about with Roots, and that word is respect. So we go through the video, and then so that's our third coaching model. What I'd like to do real quickly is just do kind of a recap of some of the things that we did today, just as kind of key takeaways, and then kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
Nice stuff, John.
Thanks, John. All right, Ruben, I know you have to go.
Yeah, you know what? I actually didn't mean to post that because I have a few more minutes. I had it ready to go in case I had to jump off earlier, the little note I put in. But before I do, John, what I'm to do in this demo differently, or work on coming off of your demo number 2 at the end of last month?
I'm sorry, Ruben, you broke up at the very beginning of that.
What I wanted to ask you, is there anything in this final demo that you were focusing on or trying to do coming out of your second demo at the end of December?
Yeah, I realized I did more like of a data dump on the second one, where I just kind of threw all the research and information and things that I do, and I just kind of went through a lot of it. And as Kelly knows, I kind of extended the time probably maybe twice as much as I should have. So this time I was more cognizant of really kind of hitting the points. I think in this particular section, the roots portion should probably take up half of it for the most part, talking about those particular items, because that's really where the culture shift is going to be, or where you're establishing the culture on those particular items, and getting a little bit of interaction with the audience also. So yeah, I was more cognizant of kind of hitting on the points and then moving on, and then kind of time management, as Kelly as very well said last time.
So John,
yeah.
Can you see the chat? Can you see the group chat? Do you have that enabled on your computer, group chat?
I don't.
Can you enable it real quick? I think there's a bubble or something that allows it to.
If you go over to the left-hand side of your screen, John, there's a little blue chat bubble. Do you want to just read through it, Ruben, what you said?
Yeah, yeah, Kelly's right. It's not so important that you see. So what I wrote down here, in case I had to leave early, was my feedback was, quote unquote, less is more. Didn't bombard us with everything. So what you were trying to do, John, came across very strongly to me. So thank you for doing that, and congratulations on that. I have 2 small pieces of suggestions for you.
Yep.
One is that when you ask us a question, wait a little longer and let us think and formulate a response, and we will respond. This group will respond. We do this enough. We're not going to leave you hanging. You asked us 3 questions where I wanted to respond, but before I could respond, you jumped in and added more questioning. Like an example would be, what's the best way to approach officials when you disagree? Instead of waiting and letting us formulate a response, you said you were too quick, John. You said, so is the best way to go nose to nose? So do you know what? Do you understand what I'm saying here?
I do. No, I absolutely do.
Yeah.
And I think standing in front of an audience and then looking out at the audience and waiting for responses is more in line with what I would be doing. In this format, I'm trying to get through this in terms of if I don't see a response, because I've watched a lot of these videos over time, and I noticed not everybody responds to questions. Like if Kelly has a question, there'll be maybe 10 people on the group. No one says anything, and Kelly's just kind of looking and waiting and waiting. So I went through it a little bit quicker, but you're absolutely right. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And then the one other thing I would say is honoring the game, Elm Tree of Mastery, and filling the emotional tank. What are the terms that PCA uses for those three, that grouping of three concepts? Those are the three what?
It's the three coaching models of the PCA.
They're the three principles, principles of positive coaching.
Right.
Double goal coach is a model. Second
gotcha.
goal parent is a model. But honoring the game is a principle.
Got it.
But it is, I agree with you, John. I think that's confusing because on the slide it says PCA's coaching model.
It does. That's
emotional tank, honoring the. I have a lot of new trainers that call it the model, and I completely understand why, because it says PCA's coaching model right on the slide. It does,
and that's why.
Well, there we go. Kelly, Joe, and I have learned something that we have to change that, because we shouldn't be confusing our trainers that way.
Well, then it does go. The next slide says PCA's model of coaching, striving to win and teaching life lessons with the circles that can join, and then it has the next one says principles. Filling the emotional tank, Elm Tree of Mastery, honoring the game. So it does, but it is.
That part's good, but the slide, I know exactly which slide you're talking about. I remember when it got put into the workshop. I didn't like it, and so okay.
Yeah. So it does say that coaching model. I know you have to go, Ruben. Coaching model, connected, improving integrity, and then principle number 3, honoring the game. I want to make one point for Ruben too on this, and maybe he has some input too. When I go through the roots portion, I think it would be better to have the officials as the second O instead of the opponents, because when you're talking about rules, then naturally you're migrating to talking about officials, because they're enforcing the rules. So you could actually say something to bridge basically the rules into the officials, and then go a little bit more into the officials. It seems to flow a little bit better than to go to opponents first and then go to, unless you're talking about opponents breaking the rules, that's a different issue.
You're welcome to change it. You're welcome to change it. Yeah.
But
just an idea.
And you when you go through it, if you want to go from rules to officials and then back to opponents, do so. The thing about changing the order of roots is there's such a domino effect.
Yeah.
There's books, there's the website, there's the PowerPoints.
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I gotcha.
At least anytime soon. Which order you move through them?
Right.
Go ahead and go rules to officials. That's fine.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
It's a great point though about why. your reasoning is fantastic on that.
Yep, your reasoning is great. John,
I might steal that from you, John. I've just been thinking about it. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, John. I thought it was a nice, strong depth.
Thanks, Ruben.
Thanks, Ruben.
Yeah, I was going to start just kind of the converse of Ruben, John. What did you like? What did you enjoy? What felt great?
I feel connected to the particular principle, because the whole idea of, for myself as a coach, always viewing everybody kind of equally and being fair and kind of creating that culture where, you want everybody to be included. I'm really big on that. And, the life lesson portion too, because I've seen, and it always upsets me when I see people disrespecting, for example, umpires and officials, because again, they've got that pro model where that happens. It's a whole different world than it is for youth. And no one thinks about, we're teaching kids lessons here. So we have to really be more respectful in that way. So I really connect with that. Yeah, no, and that's pretty clear. That came across really clearly. I think, overall, the fact that you've been around this for a good amount of time now, and you've really dug in, it really has contributed to this being very smooth, and you have great command of what you're doing, and just an easy sort of knowledgeable way about this. I think it's fantastic. I love that you kind of hit on one of my tropes, which is building structure for participants. You right off the bat, you said, hey, we just talked about Curtis Granderson. Let's connect that. And I love that you're connecting ideas rather than sometimes inexperienced trainers will go slide by slide.
and
Right.
you're really connecting ideas, not slides. And I just love that.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that. There are a bunch of examples of that, actually. You connected to culture in both directions. And then the one that I thought I want to say missed, but the one opportunity you had to connect that you didn't was, we start with this workshop with what? With talking about athletes' needs. And to me, that I like that shift. A lot of people don't like that shift. I like it because it puts the focus on the athletes first. So this concept, this principle, thank you, Ruben, connects to which of the athletes' needs? Do you recall? Because I usually connect. So we said at the beginning that what do we say athletes need? There are 3 things they needed.
Well, they need to feel connected. They need to feel that they're improving, and they need to feel that they're acting with integrity.
Fantastic. And each one of those has a corollary principle, which is how we do it then. So here's what they need. Here's how we're going to fulfill that need. I just like it would fit real well with what you're already doing with structure. Love the pasta party bit. That was fantastic. Love bringing the association officials research. That's just good, solid stuff. So I'm going to pick on 2 things I think are sort of wish list for me. And I struggle with this one a lot, but the concept of respecting self. What we say in a lot of the books, but I don't think it rings out clearly enough, is we really focus on self being, what do I do? If I believe all these things, I believe in this. I personally, I'll give you my example. I believe in respecting officials. I've been an official for years. Yeah. I'm terrible at respecting officials. So that's, and that's the self question. The self question is, now this is easy because we're in a nice room, right? But when it comes down to your game time and, it's close to winning or losing, and, do you do the things you say you believe? And that's the real, for me, the definition of respecting self. And then the notion of tools. I'm doing it differently than I used to, and I don't know if this helps or not. The way we're sort of presenting from the slides, and this is not just you, by the way, this is not you at all, is that we're sort of giving you all this great stuff. And it very much puts the focus on the presenter in the situation.
Right.
I really want to shift as much of the focus to the participants as I possibly can in every workshop. And tools is really where I've been focusing on to do that, because I felt I wasn't doing as good a job as I needed to in tools. Right. And so what I do earlier in the workshops, we talk about making a tool and what a tool is. But as you're going through things like scenarios, I'll tell them, okay, now make that into a tool. So you said, I might try this. Well, now if you're talking to a less experienced coach and they ask you, what would be the tool? And what winds up happening is they hit on a lot of good tools that we have later on. And we don't have to go say, well, this tool, we could try this, and this, we could try this, because they've already said it. And you've got some great coaches in the room, and it really empowers them to say, hey, you know what? We're not bad coaches. We're doing this stuff. This is great.
Yeah.
And so that's my shift on the tools. But overall, it does 2 things. It helps me, use the tools well, but it also helps me make sure that it's as little as possible about me in the presentation. And God knows it's about me. But I definitely want the participants to own their workshop. And that's one of the ways I do it.
So Joe, I just want to piggyback on that real quick. One of the things that I did the last time I did this workshop, after the scenario, I had them all talk in groups and I had them share out what they would do. And then I brought somebody up to be a coach, and I was the official, and I had a whistle in my hand, and I said, it was soccer. And I said, I just made a horrible call against your team. Your team is in the front row. Coach, first of all, show us your self-control routine. So he was, it was funny. He was acting, he was role playing. But he was like,
I did that in the last workshop too. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And then he said, and I said, okay, now I want you to tell me how you would use narrated modeling to tell your bench what just happened. So, and it was really good because he was, and I said to the group, listen in to hear what he says and find out what you liked and what you didn't. And he said, the first thing this was just 2 weeks ago, the guy said, kids, I know that was a bad call, but I really think that we got to keep playing through it. We got to play the game. And, everybody was clapping, like, good job. And then somebody in the room goes, you just told your kids that the officials made a bad call.
Yep.
What you just disrespect. And the guy was like, you're right. I did. So it was such a learning opportunity. And it was a role play, and we were working together, and we were using the tools so that he got to practice them. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how are you?
He got to practice the tools right there at the workshop, so that now tomorrow or next week, when he gets a horrible call called against him, he can go, wait, I can't tell my players that was a bad call. Or I think if I just told him that, he wouldn't have understood it.
Yeah, I saw a hangout where you guys were talking about, the type of word, the right word to use for that. And I thought questionable was actually a pretty good word. Because it's a question, it's a questionable thing. But then again, you go and speak to the official, and you come back and you explain to the team exactly what that official told you. So they have an understanding of their thought process. Hey, they think, They don't just react. They don't just make mistakes. They're actually thinking.
Yeah.
So
I also wanted to comment not on your presentation, but on something you said afterward, which I thought was really important about people responding and how many people respond. That's a really important comment you made right there. My take on it is, and Kelly might be different, she knows more than I do clearly, but is that that's really hard to practice in these demos, partly because it's something you establish strongly at the beginning of a workshop. So if you've gone 15 minutes in a workshop without interaction, forget it. It's you know, your ability to really have it be participant driven is a little bit shot. It's really a thing that you establish as the tone of the workshop right off the bat.
Right.
So I think it's the right question. I'm grateful you asked it. I don't think it's something you can easily display here because it's something that you're really building from the start, and the workshop itself becomes, you know, just that's the tone of that's the mode of the workshop. Is that we're talking.
I mentioned to Kelly about using an icebreaker. Using an icebreaker actually before we got after the intro part, you know, get some interaction there, but then do a real icebreaker before we get into the coaching principles.
Good stuff.
And my idea for I can explain real quick if you have 2 minutes. I'll explain the concept. So I would basically have teams. I would basically say if I had 20, 24, 25 people in a room, I would say, let's say 24. I would say, let's get into groups of 6. I need one leader from each group. I hand out an index card with a pencil, and I say, okay, get into these corners. We're gonna have a little contest here, a little friendly competition, and it's gonna be an opportunity to win $25,000. So the winning team will have a chance to win $25,000. Then what I was gonna do is ask basically two riddles and 1 sports question. So it'd be like a trivia thing. So they get to interact and work on the questions. And it would be kind of fun. And then so there'd be a tiebreaker too in case that happened. And so then there would be a winning team at the end. And then I would show them that here's now everyone gets this now, a chance to win $25,000. And I show this lotto ticket scratch off.
There you go. You got a chance.
Where you can win $25,000.
That's funny.
I like it.
So yeah, that was kind of the idea of getting the icebreaker going.
And then there's another piece of that you know, I think sometimes trainers do a great job at the outset, like doing icebreakers like that, but then kill conversation with the way they ask and answer questions because they don't respond to the questions as if the answers had value. So, you know, they never take, hey, wait a minute, that's a great idea. Let me ask you a question about that. How did you show somebody how you did that? Come up. I've said, come up here and teach that for about 1 minute. Teach what you're saying here. And so a lot of times say, hey, this question, which really doesn't have any interesting answers because it's not a challenging question. What do you think? Bam, great. What do you think? Bam, great. I don't care what those people are saying. I was supposed to ask a question here, and that's what Kelly Kratz told me, and that's what I did. And so the authenticity of the answers and the respect for that is a huge part of getting enough, people talking when you ask them a question. Because at some point, it's not even a conscious thing. They'll just turn off and say, it's not a real question. Because he's not really answering. We're just saying things because he said to say things, and they turn off. So there's a couple ways to keep them kind of popping like that. Sorry, Kel, took too much time.
No, you're fine. You're fine. My only other comment on that, just on the icebreaker topic, John. I love icebreakers. I'm like the queen of getting people up and moving around. I absolutely love it. But what I've shifted to over the last almost 10 years of doing workshops is making them more purposeful icebreakers. So instead of doing like silly trivia questions, ask them a question that actually you can use later in the workshop. So, think about a moment where you just remember in sports, you laughed your head off. What was the funniest moment you remember in sports? What was the, and you can link it later to filling the emotional tank, or what was the, I did that at a workshop once. And this one guy said that his basketball coach was up there like screaming at practice, and one of the guys came down and pantsed him. And like, the guy was in his late 50s, and he said, this happened when I was 16 years old and I still remember it. And the coach's response was like laughing his head off, So it's just things like that you bring up that are icebreakers. They're funny, but they also have to do with what you're going to be talking about later. So
yeah, that's a good one too, because we want to keep promoting the fact that, sports should be fun. That's one of the main things that kids should have when they're playing is fun. Right. So yeah. Yep,
exactly. So I just have a few. I mean, I think what Ruben and Joe said were fantastic. A lot of them, the comments they made, I hit on as well. The one thing that I just a little added bonus, you mentioned all the companies or all the organizations that use Honoring the Game. You can also mention, they're all of our national partnerships. So they have decided nationally to become a partner with PCA. So they can put all of our PCA material on any website they have. But I also tell people like, now that you are, whatever, Manhattan Little League, now that you're one of our partners, you have the rights to put any of our information on any of your websites as well. And we encourage you to do so.
Yeah.
So
I see that
might
all
be
the
a
time. Yep.
little caveat you can add in there, like a bonus of doing it.
Great.
My only question is this, and someone actually brought this up. I forget, one of the executive directors brought this up when they were doing a demo, and they did the same thing that you did. They went through all of the routes, explained it super well, great ideas. I loved it. Let me ask you this question. Which one of those ROOTS is most challenging for Joe?
You're asking Joe?
I'm asking you,
No,
Don.
she's asking you because I said it earlier.
Oh, okay. I thought he said self, actually.
Okay, so what would you do as a coach to help Joe overcome that challenge? So I'm asking you hypothetical questions. The point being is that we often go through all of these ROOTS and explain what they are and explain what they are. But as a trainer, do you really have a handle on which ones this specific group of coaches are challenged with?
Yeah. So right. So that's
and actually, I would have said officials. If you would have asked me that question, I would have said officials because Joe talked about officials. But I just think that as trainers, sometimes, as Joe said, we make it about us. We make it about telling information. And you are a very verbal linguistic person that has a lot of great information. But this is also the end of the workshop. So these people have already been in there listening to you and participating. So they're starting to fade. They're starting to get hungry. If it's at night, it's starting to get dark. They know the end is near. So I mean, the second that this starts, honoring the game, I get them up out of their seats. I have ROOTS around the room. I explain nothing. And I say, here we go. All around the room.
Go into that section.
You see the word rules, opponents, officials, teammates, and self. If it's in an auditorium, I say, I give it to them. Just because I know that at this point in the workshop, I'm going to lose them if I talk.
Right.
So we still talk, we still explain, we still go through them. But just looking at the group that I've already known now for an hour and 15 minutes or so, an hour and 10 minutes, it's neat for me to see which one is most challenging for the jerk that sat in the front row and gave me a hard time through this whole workshop. And now he says that honoring the opponents is the hardest for him. It's just a way for you to direct the conversation and make it about the coaches.
Right.
And you don't necessarily have to, I mean, you can do stand up if rules is is challenging for you. Stand up if officials, thumbs up, whatever you want to do. But I'm just saying, I think you need to have a good idea of the group. Because I've been to some workshops where they say, all of our coaches are really respectful of officials and our parent, we don't have any trouble. And I'm like, really? Like, where are you coaching? But it's just, and sometimes I harp on the negativity and how the coaches and the parents are screaming at officials. And I think if I didn't ask that first, I would assume everybody has trouble respecting officials. But this little league in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, we're like, no, we don't have any trouble with that. Our coaches and parents are great with respecting officials. I'm like, oh, okay.
No, I agree with that.
I also really like the way you said, be a noticer of culture. As Joe was saying, you're bringing the concepts full circle. Be a noticer of effort, but now be a noticer of culture and point that out. So I thought that was fantastic. So, I mean, that's really the only two comments that I have. And also just to facilitate the sharing out of ideas when you had us talk about the scenario. I know you would have done it in a real workshop, had us share out our ideas as a group, but that's a great opportunity when, let's say Joe and Scott and Ruben's group started sharing how they would handle officials. That's where I mentioned the tools. Like as they're sharing it, because you might hear something that sounds like modeling and teaching, or it sounds like narrated modeling. And I'll say, oh, what you're talking about is narrated modeling. That's great. Thank you. What you're talking about is a self-control routine. Thank you for using a self-control routine. So I'm going to mention the tools as they're sharing. So that when you show the next slide and go, guess what? You guys know it all. You know how to use it. This is what we call it. So that would be my suggestion. But that's just more in terms of live facilitation. Because John, I'm excited to get you out there and to get facilitating live. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, same. Yeah, you're I mean, you were at New York Trainer Day, a year ago? I mean, you're ready to roll here. So excited to get you out there.
Yes. So congratulations. I will follow up with an email, John, saying that you're now an associate trainer. And we will get you the workshops that are coming up, and any ones that work for your schedule, let us know, and we'll plug you in to get out to a live workshop with a trainer.
All right. Awesome. And thanks for the feedback. It's really great. Yeah,
absolutely. Scott is going to go. You're welcome to stay on, John, but if you have to go, we understand. Scott's going to do his demo. He's from Texas.
Yeah, I'll stay on. Sure.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Scott, my daughter's in San Antonio right now as we speak. She's coming home tomorrow. She's loving it. I can't hear you now, though, Scott. Something's going on. Hold on. I heard you when you first got on. Now I can't hear you. Nope, I can't hear you. That's weird. I thought we heard him when he first got on.
He's doing the PCA thing. He's muted. He doesn't think it. I do it all the time.
Is he muted though? I don't think he's muted.
I don't know. Maybe he's muted on his headset.
Usually I can see when he's muted. Nope.
He's got headphones on.
Yeah. Maybe did your headphones unplug or something? No, that doesn't really. We heard you when you first got on. Oh, there you go.
Now?
That's good.
There you go.
Gotcha.
Is my volume okay?
It's perfect. You sound like a radio announcer. Actually, you look more like an Air Force controller, but that's okay.
Okay, so can I ask one question before I get started?
You may.
Okay, so if I'm doing a workshop here within this month or next month, are all the coaches that are in attendance, are they all basketball coaches, or is there a variety of coaches there?
It depends what workshop you're doing.
Yeah, let me hit that one too, Kelly, because I know why he's asking.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm your lead trainer. I'm Joe, by the way, for Central Texas, and we do a lot of basketball there because of the Silver and Black Give Back, which is the Spurs community outreach organization. But that doesn't mean that it will be all basketball workshops. So during this time of year where we're doing the Silver and Black workshops, there are a lot of basketball ones, but that doesn't mean that we focus on basketball.
Okay.
Sorry, Cal. I didn't realize if you need to lay the land with that whole thing.
Yeah, because I've been trying to plug associate trainers in, and they're all Silver and Black Give Back. So.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Scott, before you get started, since Joe and John didn't get to see you the last time, this is your second demonstration. And Scott did really, really well with the first one, but there were also some things you were working on, and that I know we gave you a lot of suggestions. So is there anything specifically that you were trying to improve on for this one that we can look for that you've really been trying to work on for this one?
Well, no, I think the overall flow of the whole presentation would be a lot better this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I got a better understanding of what was wanted, and I think I'm ready for it.
All right, awesome. What principle are you going to do today?
I'm doing filling the emotional tank, principle number 1.
Okay, do you have it there to be able to see it, or would you like me to pull it up?
I do. I got my trusty old school binder that I normally set on the desktop. So
that's good. All right, we got it. Well, you have 3 of us here as your coaches, but we can be a room of 30 if you want us to. So don't be limited by just having 3 of us behind a computer screen. We want you to make this as realistic as possible. So if you want us to get into groups or stand up or sit down or whatever you want us to do, just tell us to do it, or just say this is what I would have you do, or whichever.
Okay. So am I starting out with an intro, or am I going straight in?
I don't think it would hurt, since Joe and John don't maybe know you that well. I think it'd be great to do a quick, there's Ruben too. Hey, Ruben. It'd be great to do a quick little intro just so we have some background, and then you can jump right into the principle.
Okay. All right. So here's how I plan on starting off. Are we ready?
We're ready. Go for it.
Okay. So good evening, coaches. I'd like to welcome everybody to Double Goal Coaching, presented by the Positive Coaching Alliance. And this is an interactive workshop. So coaches, let me ask you. So is anybody, what would you like to achieve tonight? So are you merely here just because you have to be here and it's a requirement, or is there something else that you'd like to gain from this workshop? Anybody?
Well, it's mandatory. We did have to be here. Yeah. So I'm missing my son's performance at school because I got to be here.
Okay. So is there anybody here that's looking to gain something that's not here just because they have to be here?
I'm looking for some new ideas. I'm kind of struggling with my team right now with their attitude. And so I'm looking for some ideas because I have a really wide range of talent. I have some kids that are really, really talented and kids that are really, really bad. And I'm really struggling with how to coach that at the youth level.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Coach. I appreciate that feedback. Again, my name is Scott Densen, and let me tell you the reason why I'm here. I'm here because I truly believe in Positive Coaching Alliance. Back in 2013 was around the time that I was retiring out of the military after 26 years. And it was the first year that my daughter was about 4 or 5. And she was, I wanted to get her out of the house. I wanted to get her going. So I signed her up for soccer. So, I was that dad that would be on the sideline, that would be running behind the loose balls. And, the coach was out there coaching, and she was coaching by herself. But, she needed help. you know, but I had never coached before. So like I said, you know, I chased down loose balls. I do whatever I thought I could to help her, but I wasn't officially the coach. So about 4 games into the season, the coach got into a physical altercation with a parent after one of our soccer games. So, of course, you know, I tried to get my daughter and get her out of there because I didn't want her to see what was getting ready to transpire. So later on that week, the coach pretty much called all the parents and wanted to know if anybody would be willing to step up and be the coach. So we wound up showing up to practice, that next practice that we had. And all the parents were like, well, you know, you kind of been helping her. Why don't you be the coach? And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'll try to be the coach. So I wind up becoming a coach. And that was like one of the best things that I could have ever done. I had you know, the season went really well. And it was just a joy just to be out there and be involved with the kids. So that's how my coaching career begun. And like I said, the reason why I'm here is because I believe in Positive Coaching Alliance. And think about it, as a parent, here it is, my daughter's first organized sports activity, and she sees her coach fighting with a parent after the game, you know. So I'm looking to make an impact on that. So coaches, if I could, would anybody be willing to read the slide that I currently have up?
Is that the Maya Angelou?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Okay, so coaches, you know, what comes to mind when you hear that? Anybody? Any thoughts?
Well, I would just say that I can relate to that, and I mean, I do remember how various people that I've come into interaction with, especially teachers and coaches, how they made me feel. Some made me feel pretty good, and some made me feel pretty lousy.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can definitely relate. You know, when you think about this quote, you know, Maya Angelou was right. You know, when you think about the quote, not only think about how it applies to us as adults sitting in this room looking at this slide, but think about how it makes kids feel by the interactions that they have with their coaches. So anybody else before we move on? All right. So the first principle in Positive Coaching Alliance is filling the emotional tank. So have any of you coaches ever coached a team or a player that has underperformed? So what does that look like? What does a team or a player that has underperformed look like?
Unmotivated.
Okay.
I would say distracted.
Okay.
I think they're mean to each other. They're blaming. They play the blame game.
Okay.
Yeah, lack of chemistry.
So let me go back for a minute. So when you hear the term emotional tanks, you know, what comes to mind when you hear emotional tanks? What are we talking about here?
A supply of positive emotions and energy.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I think just how they handle themselves, how they deal with things that go on, how they react to things, how they're feeling about situations.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, when you think about kids, you know, they can be very emotional. You know, so how would an athlete with an empty emotional tank, how would he or she be performing, or what are some of the characteristics that you would see in that athlete?
Slow.
Unmotivated.
Unmotivated. Okay. Slow. Anybody else?
Hesitant is the way I guess it's related to slow, but they certainly seem to take their time figuring things out.
Okay. Okay.
Negative about everything.
Wow. And how can negativity impact a team?
It's like cancer.
Absolutely. It's like a plague. I mean, you have one, and then they just, you know, then it reaches another player, and then another player, and then you have a team that is truly underperforming. So, you know, athletes with an empty tank are pessimistic. They give up more easily, and they're less coachable. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Why do you think they're less coachable? Are they still committed? Are they still wanting to play that sport?
Sometimes not.
Okay. Okay. Sometimes kids are merely out there because mom and dad want them to be out there, correct?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. So what about athletes with a full tank? What are you going to see in them athletes that have a full emotional tank?
I think they're going to be excited and they're going to try lots of new things.
Absolutely.
Not be down on themselves.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah, energetic and enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Positive outlook.
Absolutely.
Eagerness.
Eagerness. Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good because that's what we want, you know, because at the end of the day, think about it. You know, we all coach at different levels. So, you know, if you're coaching at the recreational level, you might have a kid out there that this is their first time playing organized sport. So we don't want to take that joy from them. You know, they might not be the best player on the team. They might not be able to do what all the other kids are doing, but they're optimistic and they want to learn. So we want to feed into that. And, you know, feeling emotional tank creates an environment for teaching and motivating athletes. You know, that's where we want our kids to be. So now we're gonna move into a scenario with filling emotional tanks. So at this time, the scenario I'm going to use is I'm going to use a soccer scenario. So how many coaches in the room have been coaching for at least 3 years? Okay, so if I could, Coach, can I get you to come up? Can I get you 3 coaches to come up as well? Okay, so here's the scenario, Coach. So, Coach, you're gonna be the star player on the opposing team, and Coach, you're gonna be the goalie for my team. And then you 2 coaches, you are coaches on the sideline that are assisting me as a coach. And I want you to fill the goalie's emotional tank after he misses this goal and we lose the game. So, Coach, are you ready? Okay, so when I say go, I want you to kick the soccer ball in the goal. And coaches, I want you coaches to fill the goalie's emotional tank. Ready? Go.
It's okay. Good try.
Okay.
You get the next one.
Good effort.
Stay aggressive.
Good, good, good. Okay, so now let's flip the scenario around. So now I want you to, same scenario, but at this time, I want you to drain your goalie's tank. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Go.
Oh, gosh.
That was awful. What are you, blind?
Again.
Oh, you cost
I did this all last night. I literally did this all last night. You hit that damn thing again. I can't believe you.
Okay, good.
Don't talk, Kelly. Not a word from me. For plenty from you today. I love you, Kelly.
So good job, coaches. Good job, coaches. So now this is the last scenario. So at this time, coaches, I want you to fill your goalie's emotional tank, but I don't want you to use any words. I just want nonverbals. Okay, ready? Coach, are you ready? Go. Okay, good job, coaches. Good job, coaches. So just a little practice on filling the emotional tank. So, you know, just take a quick second to think about maybe your current season or your last season. And did you do everything right when it came to filling the emotional tanks of your players? You know, research shows that 90% of all communication is nonverbal. We are communicating all the time. And I truly believe that as a coach. You know, I feel that we're communicating from the time that we walk on the field and speak to our players until the time that we tell the parents, hey, your child practiced great tonight and I'll see you next Thursday. So communication, we're communicating all the time as a coach. So coaches, what is one thing most coaches can do to be more effective? Don't answer. Just think about that as we move through the workshop. So if coaching involves a combination of tank filling and tank draining, what if there is a correct balance would it be? for doing that? What would be the correct ratio for positives to criticisms? Anybody?
I think 3 to 1.
3 to 1. Okay. Okay.
2 to
Anybody
1.
else? 2 to
2 to
1.
1.
2 to 1. Okay. Anybody else?
10 to 1.
Wow. That's a lot. So let me ask you this, coaches. How many of you interact and talk positively to your players during practices? Is everybody doing that? Is everybody taking advantage of opportunities that you have during practice to build up your players? Anybody think they're doing a great job of that right now as a coach?
Yeah.
We're doing pretty well.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. So research in coach learning and relationships all points to this ratio, that this magic ratio of 5 to 1 being the ratio that we want to achieve as coaches, because they believe, PCA believes, that magical things will happen when we reach a ratio of 5 to 1. And think about it, you know, everybody in here probably works on a job or what have you. So if you're not the supervisor on your job, how does it make you feel when you get positives from your supervisor? And if you are the supervisor on the job, how well of a job are you doing of encouraging your employees with positive comments? Anybody? Any thoughts?
Not thinking about it too much that way.
Okay. Okay. So would you agree that a positive ratio of 5 to 1 could impact players?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So each coach, well, let me ask you this. Is there any coaches in here at the time that believe that can remember when you were an athlete, something that a coach said that really lifted you up, that you still think about today? Like if you're thinking about something, it's like the first thing that pops up. Any
Yes.
positives? Okay.
Yep.
Can you share?
Yeah, my college baseball coach, actually at the very beginning of the season, he gave me his expectation of how many wins. I was a pitcher, so how many wins I should have for that season. And it made me feel like, wow, I never thought I could win that many games, but it really motivated me to work harder.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And it probably put pressure on you at the same time to perform. To perform.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Okay. So you know, one of the things that's noted is that, you know, 85% of John Wooden's feedback to his players was tank filling, which created an atmosphere of continued excellence. And you know, when I think about that, you know, I just personally believe that, you know, in order to be successful in life, you got to be committed to something. And you know, I think that commitment should be to excellence. So you know, I can truly understand. And at the end of the day, we all know the legacy that John Wooden left in the basketball world. So moving back to that question that I asked you earlier about the one thing coaches can do to be more effective, now I'd like to get feedback from you coaches on what you think that might be.
Just be positive.
Be positive. Okay. Anybody else? So at PCA, we think the number one thing that coaches can do is increase their ratio. So, like I said, if you're already doing this, you know, just think about, are you doing it to the 5 to 1 ratio? And if you're not, try to find them opportunities that you have during the game or during practices where you can add to that ratio. You know, and you know, it's hard to, you know, let me come back to that thought. But at the end of the day, you know, we feel at PCA, we feel this is the most important thing coaches can do to be more effective, which is increase their ratio. This is absolutely the most important tool you can use. Are we in agreement, coaches, or does somebody not agree with that?
Agreed.
Okay. Good. Okay. So at this time, coaches, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pull out the book you were given when you signed in this evening. And if you would, all I need you to do, coaches, is read page 2. while I cue up the clip that we're going to watch on Phil Jackson. Okay, so coaches, at this time, we're going to watch this clip on Phil Jackson. Okay, coaches, that was a pretty good clip on Phil Jackson. What are your thoughts about what you heard Phil Jackson talk about during the clip?
I think it was just interesting that he was just talking about even the toughest players also need positivity.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Words hurt, you know, and think about it. Think about the last time somebody said something to you that really hurt your feelings, you know. So it's important, coaches, that we're mindful of the words that we use when we're interacting with our players. So coaches, now, you know, at this time, I want to move to a scenario. I know a lot of you might be a little tired. You know, you're coming from work this evening. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at the scenario that I currently have up. You know that athletes thrive on positive feedback, but your team has been struggling and needs a lot of correction. As a double goal coach, how can you give them the feedback they need to improve without discouraging them? So coaches, at this time, what I need you to do is I need you to move into groups of 4. So it can be 3 or 4 people that are currently on the aisle that you're sitting in. So break down into groups of 4. You know, this will get you moving around a little bit. I know we've been here for a minute. Just get the blood circulating. So take a couple minutes to discuss this and interact with each other on how you would handle this as a coach. Okay, so coaches, stay in the groups that you are. So would anybody like to share what your group came up with? How would you handle this as a coach?
Our group talked about how we have to first point out what they're doing really well. So instead of just going right into criticizing them, we talked about how there's a lot of things you can point out, things they're doing well so far. Maybe they're playing defense really well. Maybe they're hustling really well, but then telling them that, you know, tell them all the good things they're doing and then tell them something they need to improve on. We thought maybe that would help. Okay,
good feedback, good feedback. Anybody else? Any other group? Okay. Nobody else? No problem, no problem. Okay, coach. So now we're going to move in some tools for your toolkit. You know, and these are some of the things that Positive Coaching Alliance thinks could help you as a coach as you move forward. The first thing you want to do is avoid non-teachable moments. You know, when I say non-teachable moments, does anybody know what non-teachable moments are?
I'm thinking like the worst possible time to criticize anybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me give you an example that I'm guilty of. And of course, I'm guilty of this before I became a member of Positive Coaching Alliance. So last year, when I was coaching soccer, I had a really good defender. She was one of my best players. And for some reason that game, I just didn't feel the vibe from the beginning of when we got there to play the game. I don't know, there was just something going on with her and she just didn't seem herself. So we're in the game and she's the other team is driving down the field and she totally does not get in position where she needs to be to help out the goalie. And of course the other team scores. So I immediately told one of my players on the bench to go in the game and she came out of the game. And of course she was upset, you know. And oh, by the way, when I looked past the bench, this was the first game that the actual sports director had came to my game and he totally witnessed what I just did. You know, I was just caught up in the emotions and, you know, I realized it, but I had already made the move, you know. So non-teachable moments are the moments that happen right after an incident, you know. You know, you don't want to break these kids' spirit. You know, you want to build them up. So, you know, I just think about that and it stayed with me. And like I said, this happened last year during soccer. So what about criticize in private? what are your honest thoughts? Because I'm a little leery about criticizing in private, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But coaches, how many of you are currently criticizing in private?
Not always.
Right. Because it's hard, we're emotional, and a lot of times we're caught up, and at the end of the day, there's things that we want to achieve while we're in practice, and we know the talent of our players. So sometimes it's hard to do that, and sometimes you want to get it out right then and there. But you wanna some things might need to wait until after practice ends. So it's a matter of knowing your players. Sometimes I might tell a player, hey, before we take off for the evening, I'm like, hey, let your mom know or your dad know that I need to speak to them. And so when I have them with their parents, I might cover something that I wanted to cover, so that way the parents kind of understand where I'm coming from as well. So, take a look at possibly criticizing in private, because at the end of the day, we don't want to break down the players. We want to continue to build them up. So the next tool for your toolkit would be asking permission. How many of you coaches ask permission of your players before you criticize them? Wow, that's hard. That's a hard thing to do. Because think about, a lot of us coach off the way we were coached when we were coming up, and nobody back in the day was asking permissions. But sometimes it goes back to knowing your players. The more you interact with the players, the better you understand them, and you understand, the buttons or what you can say to motivate them or to get them back on track. So, think of that as a tool that you can use also. What about using if and then statements? And has anybody ever used an if and then statement?
I don't know. Give me an example. I might have.
Okay. An example would be during basketball. One of the things I tell my players is if you run too far under the goal, you won't be able to use then you won't be able to use a square on the backboard when you're trying to make your layup or your jump shot. So that would be an example.
Okay.
So if you run too far underneath the goal, then you won't be able to use a square on the backboard. Mm-hmm. I'm big on fundamentals, and one of the things in coaching I do is I always encourage kids to use the square on the backboard. Anybody else?
I'm coaching lacrosse, and I often tell them to look for the second pass, not the first pass. So you might not get the first pass, but only one person gets the first pass of the ball, but the other 10 of you can be open for the second pass. So I'm always looking for the second passer. So I tell them, if you're all rushing towards the person with the ball to get that first pass, there's not going to be anybody there for the second pass. So I always tell them to step up and be the second passer. So if you stay wide, then you have the opportunity to be the second passer. But if you're all bunched up on the girl with the ball, there's not going to be anybody to pass to.
Outstanding, coach. Good feedback. So what about criticism sandwiches? Who knows what a criticism sandwich is?
Sounds tasty.
Absolutely. So a criticism sandwich is when you start off the conversation with a positive, and then you add in the critique, whatever point you are trying to convey to that player, and then you end up that conversation with another positive. So we don't ever want to. We're not trying to tell you as coaches that you can't correct your players or you can't critique your players. It's just we're trying to give you a format to use that will help you and also get that max performance out of your players. Because sometimes when a player is corrected, it can be a downer. I mean, I currently have a player on my basketball team now. He's a phenomenal athlete, but he has so much pressure put on him by his parents, especially mom. Dad is more laid back, but mom puts a ton of pressure on him. So I often kind of hold back on what I need to say with that player, whether it's right or wrong, because I see how the interaction is going between mom. It's like every time I give him a water break, mom is just grilling him on something, and I want that player to understand that I care more about him as a person than I do as a player. So, if he doesn't make any shots, it wouldn't matter to me. It's what you do after you miss the shot. And that's what I'm trying to encourage him to do. But I just see that just by the way he reacts after he does something wrong, he'll either stop right in the middle of the play or he'll fall out of bounds when he's taking a shot. And I just see him look over to his parents, and I already know that or I already hear the comment that's coming out. So, use this tool whenever possible when you're interacting with your players. So now we're going to move on to some additional tools that you can use as a coach that would help you. The buddy system. Has anybody ever used the buddy system when it comes to filling emotional tanks with your players?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit what you're doing, Coach?
I just buddy up 2 players for one practice. They get a new buddy every practice, and their job, like we do like shout outs, and their job is to cheer for their buddy if it's in a drill, or, that's your buddy for like partner passing or whatever, but that's just like your person for the whole practice.
Okay. Good. So that's important, and as a coach, it makes me proud when I hear other players complimenting their teammate during practice or during a game or what have you. Another tool that you can use is positive charting. Now, of course, if you're out there coaching by yourself, I don't know if you're going to have an opportunity to do positive charting where you're actually writing it down. I think most of us keep a mental number in our head, or maybe it's not even keeping a number in our head. Maybe it's taking advantage of every opportunity that we have or that we see to give a player a positive comment, So, but if you are looking for a chart, you can definitely go to devzone.org on page 70, and there's a format for positive charting. And if you have assistant coaches, this would be a great tool for one of your assistant coaches to do, because not only is it helping your players, but it's going to help you as a coach, because when you go back and look at what your assistant coach wrote down and your ratio, it might shine some light on whether you're doing a good job of this or whether you're not. The last thing is winner circle. So how many of you coaches at the end of your games huddle up your players? Or do you just let them leave and just, see them when you see them, or, see them when you come to the next practice? Is anybody huddling up their players after a win or a loss?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why is that? Why do you huddle up your players, Coach?
I think just to give them some tips and pointers and go over the game a little bit, tell them how they did.
Absolutely. Why is that important?
Just to kind of give them a recap, let them see the big picture, whether they won or they lost. It's good to kind of get them redirected for the next game or the next practice.
What about the parents? Is there any benefit in that for your parents?
I don't usually invite them to my huddle after the game.
Well, the reason why I ask that, a lot of times, like when we're on the soccer field, as I got them grouped up, a lot of the parents will start walking up because they're trying to, they want to gather their kids, and then you might have the snacks being brought up. So that's the reason why I asked that. But winner circle is a definite great opportunity for a coach to, like you said, Coach, is to give a reenactment of the game, or things that you've seen during the game that were positive, things that you've seen were negative. And then it's also an opportunity for the players to interact with each other and go around the circle and say, hey, it gives them an opportunity to give a positive to one of their teammates that they seen during the game. Okay. So that is it for me.
So how would you transition into the next one? Just give me the one sentence. How would you shift instead of just saying, that's it, now let's go to the next one? How would you transition?
So now, coaches, we're going to move into the next principle of Positive Coaching Alliance, which is honoring the game. I know that's probably not the right one.
No, that's I think it's mastery, but that's okay.
I think it's ELM. I should have put that slide in here because there was definitely one in here that talked about, you know what? The last slide in here is the PCA coaching model.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry. I didn't.
No. That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I just realized that I do these demos separated by work, each principal. And then you go out to do it and you're like, wait, there's no transition. It's just like, okay, now let's go on to the next one. And sometimes I think it's nice to have a good transition from one principal to the next. So thank you, Scott, very much. Thank you. All right. I would love to, just right off the bat, do you have any idea how long that principal took you to do? How much time?
Well,
last time I know time management was one of the things we talked about, but were you aware of how much time you were taking on this one?
No.
Okay.
I wasn't timing myself. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think that's going to be one of the challenges for you because you do have such great things to say and you do a great job at getting us involved. But that was 31 minutes. Wow. Yeah. And I just think at the end of a workshop, you're going to run out of time if you spend that amount of time. Because I think the last one that you did, the intro, I don't have it right here, but I think you definitely went over a half hour with the intro too. So most of the workshops are they're scheduled for 2 hours, but you usually don't get the full 2 hours. So I usually say bank on about 90 minutes. And I just don't want you to get to the end and spend 2 minutes on honoring the game because you're running out of time. So just be aware of time. I've actually asked a coach in the front row to be my timekeeper. And I say, can you just put your hand up every 20 minutes? Or give me a wave or just something. Or sometimes I'll even have my phone right on the table and I'll just have a stopwatch set. So I know, or just keep a look at the clock. And that's going to be something that I think is going to help you a lot. But
definitely one of the things, if I'm there with another person that's that I'm working with during the workshop, I definitely would ask them in advance to cue me up, if I'm, go to the very back. So when I look past everybody, I see him or her back there and they give me a signal that, hey, you need to wrap it up or, something, things that we do to let people know that we need to, you're getting short on time.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of strategy you can do. I think that's going to be something that helps you out a lot, just in terms of being able to fit everything in. But there's a lot of great things, Scott. I like, I don't know if I don't think Ruben is there. Joe or John, I would love to hear if you guys are on to hear what are some things you really liked about what Scott did, and what are some improvements that opportunities you have for him to improve.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo Kelly, and I think some of the charm of you up there is you are a grassroots guy, and I think you're speaking to people. I think you'll have great resonance with the people you're speaking to, and just a great, just natural authenticity. I think that's going to play real well for you. And my wish would be, overall, I think you did some really nice things with activities. I still feel like it's your workshop, not theirs, a little bit, and that's always a tough transition for all of us. It's such a tricky balance to keep it being their workshop, and I felt it most during the tools. So there are parts of the tools just felt like a list. Okay. And that's hard to do. It's a tall order to really make those energized. Kelly's got some great ideas. We all do it our own way. But Kelly's brilliant. And, one of them is really just have them use one of the tools. Kelly will talk to you about, she just talked in the last call about, a role play type modeling thing, which is great. But just find your way to make it theirs and to really encourage and value the voices of the coaches in the workshop. You're going to have some great coaches in your workshop. There's some coaches who really, they're on the right page. They know their stuff. They've got great ideas, and it would be, it'd be giving something away not to use that expertise in the workshop.
Absolutely,
because they're good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks,
Joe.
Joe.
Some knuckleheads too. Oh, quick one. I do have one quick question for you, because I get this. We do get this from time to time. So, and I didn't want to stop you in the workshop. I almost did, but I didn't want to. Coach, so you're telling me I got this knucklehead kid. I've got one thing to tell him. I got to come up with 5 truthful, specific things, good, to tell him before I say, hey, you got to put your left foot down first.
No, that's not what if that's what I was conveying. No, I mean, it's a ratio. So it could be, you might start out with the thing that came up negative. It's about being honest to the players. So, I'm not saying that you had to say 5 positive before you come to the 1 negative, but it's pretty much the way that it flows, as far as when that negative might happen,
Yeah, I got you. And I think there's a certain sort of pushback points where you'll hone sort of some responses that are there, and some tools that you have, as a coach, that may or may not be listed in our tools section. There's a few of them for that. There's a lot we can do there, but just know that some of these tricky spots are coming, because if you do a great job, they'll push back. If you're doing a great job in the workshop, they'll disagree sometimes because that means they feel empowered to use their voices.
Right.
You know, I'll tell them right off the bat, if you don't push back on anything, I'm gonna start making stuff up that's just wrong because you're not listening. But I'll say, look, if I don't, some of this should be challenging, should kind of tick you off a little bit. This is hard stuff.
How would you answer that question, Joe? If somebody asked you that in a workshop, how would you answer that?
Well, I go into it without letting. I talk a lot about what's really important to me is the listening to practice and do the athletes have a voice in encouraging each other? Have they learned explicitly to encourage each other? Is it part of your shooting drill that, hey, somebody's saying great shot? You know, that there's a thing that we do to continually have athletes compliment each other. And then also, what does your practice sound like? Is it a steady stream of fix this, fix this, fix this in the nicest possible voice in the world? Or is it a lot of guys really fired up saying, hey, great run, great sprint, great, hey, way to do that. That's a great take right there. What is the flow? And I think actually you mentioned that. I just, I've said it 500 times. You haven't.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
Yeah, so I thought Scott did a great job. I thought he was extremely consistent. Like right from the get-go, I knew it was going to be a good workshop. Like he just started off right away asking the questions. He's very easygoing, very believable. I think Scott said that he's only been coaching for, is it 5 years?
Yes.
So it amazed me because the way you handled yourself and your stories and the experience transcended that. So I thought you were more of a coach that maybe 10, 15, 20 years than just 5 years. So I was really impressed with that.
Thank you.
And so I think you really connected well. I mean, you connected really well with the principals in terms of what you giving examples. And the examples were really things that I thought about myself, things that happened on the field with parents, with other coaches, that type of thing. So I thought it was really good.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I was actually surprised because last time when you did your demo, I forgot that you had only been coaching for 5 years because I knew that you received the Coach of the Year award. But the other part is being in the military for 26 years, you were doing a lot of coaching there as well.
Absolutely.
Even if really important coaching. So.
Absolutely. Coaching, teaching, and mentoring.
Oh man, use that.
Oh, he did. The last time he did.
Yeah.
He used in his intro. But I think
good. That's such a valid, important voice in there too. I love hearing that. Great stuff.
When I open up my workshop, I definitely will go back into that.
Good. Yeah, absolutely.
He shared a lot of that in the intro. It was really good.
Tremendous. Good to hear. What a great tool for you.
Thank you.
One of the best quotes I think I wrote down, Scott, I steal quotes from these trainers that you guys that do this for me all the time. And you said a lot of times the military guys will see these new guys coming in and they'll say that these kids aren't as tough as us. These kids aren't as tough as we were. And Scott pushed back and said, if we train them right, they're going to be better than us.
Absolutely.
I thought that was awesome.
Fantastic. That's what a real educator sounds like. Somebody wants people they're teaching to be better than they are.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I thought that
I
was
love
great.
that.
All right. I think Ruben stepped away. I don't know that Ruben's there right now, but Scott, my probably one of my only concerns, for lack of a better word, is your time management. I think there's nothing that you did in there today that I was like, oh, that's not good, or take that out, or that's a little off. Like, I think your whole vibe is great. I love your conversational tone as John and Joe both said, you're really likable. I mean, you're smiling, you're having fun, you're enjoying it. You're getting us involved all the time. And I think that's great. I think when you watch it back, you might see that sometimes it slows down your pace sometimes when you ask too many questions.
Right.
And sometimes there's an activity or a group discussion or a partner discussion that can take the place of you having to ask questions. Because when you are asking constantly, like back and forth, it's you are one person and you're asking one person for an answer. So it's only involving two people at the time. Whereas if they're in a discussion or if they're all participating by, like you said a couple times, like raise your hand if you agree, raise your hand if you disagree. That's keeping us involved on a bigger scale. So it might not be, taking as much time to do that. I really love a lot of the things that you did. I like the questions in a row about what does an underperforming team look like? And, how would somebody with an empty tank perform? Because I think that's what it's all about. It's about your performance. And what I like to do is get coaches to think about, when you have an underperforming team, did you ever think that it was because of the empty emotional tank? Or do you just think it's because they're not listening, they're not paying attention, their parents are not good parents, all these things that I used to think about when I realized, wait, their tanks are low and I have a lot of power to fill their tanks. So
absolutely,
I think that was great. I thought the scenario was good, the verbal and nonverbal. It's a lot more fun when you get people up there laughing and joking around. I also often like to have them teach. So this is something, again, I've started doing a lot in my workshops. Rather than telling them, showing the slide that says what drains the tank and what fills the tank and having the criticism and correction, sarcasm, ignoring, nonverbals, that slide, you know what I'm talking about? I'll have them get in groups of 4 or even a group of 8, and they have to teach it to each other. So like to their group, like, okay, one of you is going to be criticizing and correcting, and one of you is going to be giving truthful, specific praise. You guys are going head to head. Give me examples of each. Next person's going to be doing sarcasm and expressing appreciation. So in their groups, they're actually teaching each other, like, what does it mean to be a sarcastic coach? And they're giving each other examples of sarcasm. Okay, now the other person, what's the opposite of that? How do you express appreciation instead of sarcasm? So as a group, they're working through them rather than me telling them. Because a lot of it, like I always call it like Captain Obvious. Like obviously they know what non-verbals will drain tanks. They know what verbals will drain tanks. It's just a different approach to a slide rather than us telling them. So something I like to do. Also, be very careful. I have no clue who John Wooden is, and I don't know his legacy.
Gotcha.
So if I have no clue who he is, I mean, you could have just said Ronald McDonald. I have no idea. So just be careful. A lot of people in sports drop names and say things like, well, you all know. And I might be the only person in the room that doesn't, but your example meant nothing to me. So, tell a little bit about John Wooden. John Wooden's the most successful basketball coach that ever coached in the NCAA. And interestingly, when they look back at his game tapes and his practice tapes, 85% of his feedback was positive. Is that a coincidence? I don't know,
So can I let me ask you a question on that? So, one of the videos that you have out there that for us, that if we want to look at prior to presenting, is the gentleman. He's a Cali Texan. It's a black guy. I forget his name, but he talked about, he added something like that into his, and you said it was good that you add research. So is it, they're on the clip, on the slide, on the presentation, there's like 3 different examples of quotes or people that the research is bounced off of. So how important is it? Do I have to acknowledge any of that, or is that does not have to be acknowledged?
I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but in terms of, nothing is a have to requirement if it's a great workshop and you're making a great point.
Okay.
We want you to be able to motivate these coaches to be better. However you can do that in your neck of the woods, that's how we want you to do it. Okay. So if there's an example, like perfect example, Joe, I might bring up, if I live in Chicago, how after the winning field goal kick was missed.
I don't even like you.
Yesterday.
You need to stop.
One of the players immediately, Madison, I think his name was, went immediately over and gave the guy a hug. So if I were doing a workshop today, that guy, Cody Parkey felt awful, but his teammate immediately went right over to him and gave him a hug and filled his tank immediately.
Yes, so that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's the kind of thing, Scott, that like current research, something local. If something like that happens, use it because that means something. It's real.
And I'm teasing Kelly a little bit, but it's a great example because look, it's right on people's brains and it's emotional for them. And emotion carries so much weight educationally, those stories that really resonate with our empathy. I think Kelly said the most important thing. That I think the most important thing our trainers do is it sort of speaks to your research question. You're not there to inform. Information will happen during the workshop for sure, but you're there to affect behavior.
Okay.
And that's I think the trickiest part because I could live with them not walking out remembering Elm. Well, not so much, but for the most part, it's not as important as whether they'll go out and use some of those principles. Tomorrow when they're out on a baseball field with a bunch of kids. So that's the high, and that's tough. That's a tough call to action for all of us, I think.
Yeah, they're not. And I always say too, they're not going to remember the bullet points, but when they want to yell a criticism at a kid, they might start it with a positive first. Absolutely. And that's when you've done your job. That you've stopped a coach from screaming at a kid in a non-teachable moment, and he's given a criticism sandwich to a kid that would have got his head ripped off. Had he not attended your workshop. So I thought that was great. I also, Scott, really liked the way I think you sprinkled in some more personal stories this time, which I like because that also connects connects the coaches to what you're talking about. Cause when you're talking about a player, they're connecting it to a player. And that's like, oh, that's great. Even when you said, like, when I asked you, I don't understand what an if then statement is. What you talked about going under the basket, if you go under the basket too far, you don't use the square. Like right now, I might not even be a basketball coach, but I understand exactly what you mean. So giving concrete tools, concrete examples, or getting a concrete example from a coach in the room is definitely what you're looking for. Okay. And the story about the mom putting too much pressure on the kid, like that was a great story because my gosh. And the way you said, I had to adjust how I criticized that kid. And I thought that was such a great point because overall, for the best performance, that kid needs a 5-to-1 ratio. If mom's giving him 10 negatives, then I got to make sure I'm giving him 50 more positives.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think that's a really good point that you are in tune with what these kids are going through. You know where their tank, and that's something that I bring up at every workshop. Are you as a coach in tune with the player's emotional tank level? And how do you figure out where their level is when they come to practice? I mean, I walk around while my kids are warming up or stretching or whatever, and I'm checking in. How you doing? How's that test you had today? Oh man, I heard you broke up with your boyfriend. You okay? How's it going? You know, like I'm talking about all this stuff with them so that I can get a sense for where they are. So I think that's important too. Other thing, the only other negative that I found, not negative, correction that I would like to do, be careful about saying, I don't know if you can do positive charting. You know, like I want every coach to think that every single one of our tools is something they can do. You might not be able to do it the textbook way that we say because you don't have an assistant coach or a slew of assistant coaches, but I use positive charting all the time. And I use it with me, one coach, and I get parents to help me and I get kids to help me. And, you know, not every kid is playing. So I give a kid a clipboard. She's 9 years old and she's doing positive charting for me. Every time you see a girl hustle for a ground ball, I want you to put a little tally mark next to her name. I mean, if 9-year-olds can do positive charting, so can I. So be careful about saying this one's kind of hard to do. Because as soon as you say that, it's going to they're going to be like, oh, I can't do it. If he can't do it, I can't do it.
Right.
I would even push it one level further, Coach. I would say, you know, exactly like Kelly says, you know, she found a way to do it. And you eloquently talked about adapting. Mm-hmm. And so if you or another coach in the workshop is inclined to say, yeah, I can't really do that. All right, let's problem solve. We figure this is going to really help us out. This is the people I have. You guys sit down. I mean, bang, right there. Yeah. You guys problem solve as coaches. These are coaches, and their job is, you know, it's to plan and adapt, like you said.
Yeah.
And so let's get them practicing some of that with a real situation where somebody says, yeah, I can never do that. Mm-hmm. So that's another way of giving that workshop back to their expertise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you'll get a lot of great ideas that you can then share at your next workshop.
Yeah.
You know?
And can I just comment, because the gentleman that just spoke, I mean, you're really hitting on something that I totally believe in. And what I mean by that, I've been to 3 Positive Coaching Alliance workshops, and I was telling Kelly that it was the second one that I went to that gentleman did exactly what you're talking about. And it wasn't a lot of his stories, it was the coach's stories. And that's what encouraged me to want to do this. And I shared this with Kelly earlier. You know, the first guy I went to see, he was good, but it was that second guy that I went to see that it was more of the coach's stories than it was his stories. And that was like, man, you know, I want to do this. You know what I'm saying? So
do you remember who that was?
I don't know. He's an older
young
gentleman.
African-American?
No.
Okay.
He's an older gentleman. It was like an NBA an event. It was he was an older gentleman. He told me he was retired, and you know, he just pretty much went around and taught these works
in Austin.
Well, we were in San Antonio at the time. It was Sam Perkins was there, and it was a couple other NBA people. Okay. But just his you know, he was just professional. I mean, like, he looked professional standing up there. Nice. And just the way that, you know, he got the coaches to tell their story. I was like, man, I really want to, you know, I want to do this and this, you know. So I spoke to him afterwards, and this is what led me to this point. But he really had that down pat.
We'll have to thank him, because I'm glad you're on board here. I think you're going to be great.
Well, that's what I wanted to find out who it was, so I could give
it sounds like Randy Youngling.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He was definitely an older gentleman, and like I said, he told me he was retired. And,
was he local there? Was he a Texas guy?
No, because he said he traveled around. It's like because he wasn't from this area.
Oh, I wonder if it was Joe Scally. I'll bet it was Joe Scally.
That name sounds.
Yeah, he's insane. I can never be Joe Scally. He's here. If it's who I'm thinking, I'm going to look up which workshop it was. But if it's the guy I think you're talking about, he is one of the greats.
Yeah.
So yeah.
This guy was good. This guy was good from start to finish. And again, it was here in San Antonio. It was last year at the end of basketball season. And he said he traveled in, you know, I think he took a plane in and got a rental car and came to the workshops. But he's the truth.
Well, we're fortunate in that we've got a lot of fantastic trainers, and we allow them, you in particular, to use your voice. You know, to motivate people your way. And a lot of companies that use, I don't love the word trainer, but a lot of companies that use contract, you know, educators don't give you the latitude to do that. And so I think it's one of the great things about being here.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Scott. My question is, so this was your second demo. Usually we let you do 3 for a final as well. I would love to see you try the last principle or one of the other principles you didn't do yet, and really just keep an eye on the time, because I think being concise but really impactful is going to be it's going to be fantastic.
Okay.
So I think
you're going to crush it.
Yeah, I would love to see you do it. I have no worries. I could send you out to a workshop, you know, coming up tomorrow and get you out there, and I'd really be excited for you. I'm not saying I want you to do another one because I don't think you're ready, but I think for your own sake, I think you would feel more confident doing it one more time within like a shorter time frame and just picking and choosing and keeping the pace going. So
you want me to limit it to 20 minutes?
I think for you, it would be a good task.
Okay.
I think, you know, years ago when I started in 2009, and one of the lead trainers that was mentoring me said, "You are doing a fantastic job. Your stories are way too long. I want you to cut any story you say at a workshop down to 1 minute." And I was like, "There's no way I can tell a story in 1 minute." And I did it. He made me do it over and over again. And I got to be a really good storyteller in 60 seconds.
Wow.
And so I was glad that he forced me to do that. Even though, you know, now my stories might be a little bit longer, but it was like forcing me to keep things concise so that in a workshop, time is going to go.
Absolutely.
Time is going to go. So if you can keep it shorter and concise, but still bring in all those elements you're doing, still get us involved, still tell some stories, still tug at our heartstrings and make an impact, I think you're going to be all that much better when you get out there.
So can I, 2 quick things before you go? So when I asked them to read page 2 in the book,